I wanted to start with you first. There's such an interesting parallel between you and Daniel, and his love for music has led him to a career in writing. And for you, music is another creative outlet alongside acting. Did you find that your work in one feeds into the other and shaping the ways that you tell stories, express yourself creatively? Is that initially what drew you to this character?
No, I've always sort of struggled to sort of understand my relationship with music and acting paired together. Do you know what I mean? They feel like very separate parts of my brain, but they definitely do feed into one another. They definitely do. And I got involved in acting and got discovered as an actor through music, through doing the film that I did with Julie Taymor, the Across the Universe film, which was a musical. So that was sort of how I got involved in the whole industry in the first place. So yeah, obviously music is a big sort of part of my life and sort of always has been. And definitely, when I read the script and I sort of connected with young Daniel on that sort of music level, I saw myself in him completely, in terms of even the music that he was listening to, even though I
Mm.
wasn't born in the same period of time, I was listening to bands that came out of the sort of north of England, Manchester specifically, the bands of the 80s, even though I was growing up in the 90s, I was obsessed in that kind of music. So yeah, instantly there was a sort of an attraction to the character. I think more than the music, though, for me, because I was sort of playing the older Daniel, I was really drawn to the sort of relationships that were being sort of presented to me as the older versions of the characters, because
Mhm.
I sort of understood it and had been through many and seen friends go through that period of sort of, yeah, relationships are they're hard when you're older and you have had a first love that you've experienced, and you do sort of have to find your way, and you change so much as you get older and you spend so much time with one particular person. And I think Daniel, in this particular instance, has found himself at a crossroads where his son has left for university. So the kids that,
Mhm.
where all the focus has been on sort of bringing up kids, has now sort of left the nest, and he's sort of left looking at himself and wondering kind of who he is now, and where does he place himself in the world, and how does he feel about certain things. So I saw a man that was very sort of lost, and I
Yeah.
found it sort of heartbreaking and painful, and the relationship felt very real between the two characters of Daniel and Katia, his wife. It felt real. It felt nuanced. It felt complicated, and it felt messy. So I was drawn to that probably more than the music, actually.
Mm. You feel that in your performance as well. And Rory, there's such a transportive quality to this limited series, particularly in your timeline, showcasing Sheffield in the late 80s and 90s. And your performance is so layered and immersive. What was it like stepping into that world? Was there a particular detail, whether in the writing, the production design, or even the costume pieces that really helped you elevate your performance? Because there's such a commanding presence that you brought to the screen.
Yeah, I mean, all of it really. The costume was big. Obviously, it helped. I remember my house, Dan's house, was on a street that did look like it could be back in the 80s, and yeah, everything really. And I remember seeing kind of like a vision board that Lucy Gaffey, the director, did. Everything kind of tied into it, and also the kind of writing. It it was suited to that time, and I mean, it was, yeah, it all kind of played into it, and it was just kind of about being there in the scene and wearing the clothes, and it all kind of helped me really.
The Walkman struck a chord with me. I don't know why. And Jim, sorry to bring it back to the music, but your debut album, Common Sense for the Animal, plays very much like a mixtape where it's free of genre constraints. You're pulling from different influences, and like your work as an actor, it always puts the message first. Is there a song off that album that you feel like could be part of Daniel's soundtrack?
Yeah, good question. Good question. I mean, yeah, it depends on which part of Daniel's life you're looking at, definitely, because there's a song on the record called "The Makeshift Numbers," which is very much a broken-hearted song. A man sort of left with sort of longing and pain. And that definitely is where we find the sort of older Daniel. But like you said, yeah, the record is sort of, it crosses a lot of genres, and growing up listening to loads and loads of different kinds of music, that was always important to me when I made a record, that I would just throw it all in and see what sort of came out, and see if you could sort of come up with something that felt sort of genreless and at the same time full of genre, if that makes any kind
Mm.
of sense. Um, yeah, I think what do you reckon young Daniel would have been into, Rory? Maybe there's a track on there called "The Hollow Man Come," which has got quite a kind of 80s, 90s kind of Primal Scream, sort
Yeah.
of Mondays kind of feel to it. He might have been into that one. I
Oh,
don't know.
100%. I've got a whole playlist that I could talk about, but I completely forget what was on there. But he listened to all sorts, Dan. He was, yeah, it was good.
All right, that's the next question that I had for you, Rory. So you might need to think about that playlist. But I think the show does such a brilliant job exploring the connection between music and memory and how certain songs can transport us back to a specific moment in time. How much did you lean on music to get into Daniel's emotional headspace, just given the juxtaposition of him being this really popular kid in school, but this kind of vulnerability and uncertainty that he feels when he's with Alison?
I listened to a lot of the songs from that period, and it was what I liked about it was the fact that it was so different. He would go from listening to proper rock to something like Stephanie Says, and a song like Stephanie Says, which is actually in the show, I think.
Yeah.
It was so sensitive and so kind of you wouldn't think a popular guy like Dan would kind of listen to that, and I think that's what helped him and Alison. They really, it doesn't matter what it was, it doesn't matter if it was new or not. Like they had they could share their appreciation for anything at the time, and I think that's what stuck with them into the future. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I love in the show that they're both sort of teaching each other about music. They have
Yeah.
shared bands that they love and they connect with that shared passion for a particular band, but they're also sort of inspiring and broadening each other's horizons. So yeah, Alison's definitely sort of weaving in her influence, and that's like
Hmm.
hitting a chord with Daniel. And we loved all that, and we made a big sort of group Spotify playlist where everyone could throw in music and throw in ideas of what they were listening to or what they were excited about for the show. And it was hard. Everyone has their own journey with music, don't they? Music's so personal and
Yeah.
so subjective. And, to sort of get the right path with what these kids are listening to and what these adults are listening to and what feels nostalgic and romantic, everybody has a different idea of that. So, yeah, I think we did a good job of sort of letting everybody have their say and
Mhm.
letting everybody have their ownership of the music and sort of carving what felt right for the characters as well.
You need to release that playlist before South by. And I think also music has that powerful way of being able to express the words that you're not able to say. And Jim, I also love how this show seamlessly moves between the past and present without ever breaking that immersion. And the two of you do such a phenomenal job of making these characters feel both familiar but also distinct across the timelines. What was it like collaborating on that? And did any of the choices that Rory made influence your own in present day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, more than anything, Lucy, in a beautiful way, the director, she's so inclusive and so brings everybody in and makes sure everybody feels a part of everything. I don't know if Rory knows this, but I was able to watch the tapes, of all the auditions of all the younger Rory, all the younger Daniels and Alisons. And so I felt really honored that I could sort of have a say and voice my opinion. And when I saw Rory, instantly I sort of felt connected to his version of Daniel and felt
Mhm.
it would match in a really sort of interesting way my version of Daniel. I saw a sort of kindness and a sort of gentleness and a sort of vulnerability there that I really sort of connected with. So that was really helpful, that I sort of already sort of felt connected to Rory just from his audition scenes. Um, yeah, it's hard because you're shooting so sort of different times. I think I shot most of my stuff first, so I think I wasn't able to sort of see and watch what sort of Rory was up to, but I just knew instinctively that he had the sort of characteristics that I wanted for my Daniel, so that
Mm.
we sort of both bring a sort of uh, you know a connecting sort of quality to the character.
Yeah, you definitely feel that as audience members. And Rory, I think I have time for more of a quick question, but this is the biggest project that you've worked on to date. What was the most surprising part about the overall experience, and what was the kind of the biggest takeaway?
Wow, yeah. I mean, it's my first thing, so it was a bit of it was a bit of a a bit of a wild ride. Yeah, no, it was. I think what I learned was the fact that there's so many people involved, you know, the characters are just a small piece of the machine, and everyone has their own job to do. There's so many creative people that are going to help, you know, make it what it is, and all you have to do really is do your kind of bit of the job, and then let it come together. And yeah, it was just a massive collaboration, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for people to see.